Hi, my name is Katie McDonald, and I decided to do my presentation and research paper on predatory pricing. So, what is predatory pricing? Predatory pricing is considered the lowering of prices to an unreasonably low or unprofitable level in a market in an effort to weaken, eliminate, or block the entry of a rival. In predatory pricing, we see that this has been a relatively new thing with the Industrial Revolution and the really rise of the corporate business. It's been about 100 to 130 years that predatory pricing has really been prevalent in our markets, and it's really driven by profit maximization. Because in a purely competitive market, it's extremely hard to make a profit. And so people will actually use predatory pricing to weed out rivals so that they can actually increase their profit margin. So there are a couple of legal implications that we're going to talk about, and then some of the rebuttals that the economic framework really has against the application of predatory pricing in the legal sphere. So the last Supreme Court case that had to do with predatory pricing was the Burke Group versus Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation of 1993. In this case, the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation were selling their cigarettes at a loss. This was to try to get Leggett, their generic rival, to raise their prices to something that they felt like they could compete with while still making profits. Through this case, we get what they call the Burke Group framework, which includes two tests that need to be answered to prove that there is predatory pricing. In this case, the Burke Group claimed that through discriminatory pricing, it was specifically targeted below Leggett's variable cost to make it so that if Leggett wanted to compete with the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Company, they would have to sell at a loss. And so the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Company did this with the intent that afterward they would recoup this loss through their profits. So the two tests that really have to be answered is the cost test and the recoupment test. The cost test has to do with proving that something is priced below cost. There's a lot of controversy about this test and which one's the most accurate method because the Supreme Court has not made a certain method the way you have to prove it. And this may be because there is lots of different ways that cost is structured through different companies and different products, and the balance of fixed and variable costs. Really what this test is trying to do is show the effect that the actions of predatory pricing had on the market, the consumer, and the competitor. And then we have the recoupment test. This is all about seeing if it's reasonably to assume that they will make this up in the long run. So they use the language reasonable prospect, and this is all about the intent. Do they have the intent to cut out the competition and therefore make profits in the long run? And there is a line that they use to actually circumvent the cost test, so they do not have to go through all the controversial nature of the cost test unless necessary, and pretty much saying that no one would actually sell below cost unless they intended to make that up in the long run. And so if they can prove that intent was there, that they did have that intent, then there was selling at a loss. So some of the criticisms that the economic framework has for the application in the legal system is the common misconception of predatory versus competitive markets. Because they're very similar in nature, there are ways that people will decrease prices, and that will actually cause competitors to leave the market, and then the remaining competitors will increase the price again. That is very common in the competitive atmosphere, but is not technically considered predatory. Also, it's very difficult to prove intent, and the cost system is very confusing. And so there's a lot of criticism saying that what the legal system uses to prove predatory pricing is too simple and too narrowly focused to actually fully encompass predatory pricing. And then there's a lot of accusations saying that it's not really taken seriously in the legal sphere um, because of the vagueness of the tests that are used. So the airline industry is a very new market within our economy, and as the last couple of decades, as deregulation has happened, there has been an increase of concern for predatory pricing. Unfortunately, our current laws only apply to goods and services. They only apply to goods, and services are not included in that. And so they are not liable under the current laws that we have. So really what I wanted to bring this up about is that because our economy is constantly shifting, especially with our new technological and services such as the airline industry, what can we do, or what changes do we need to make to our lawful system to really protect markets from predatory pricing? Thank you so much.